All right, fantastic. Today, Dan and I are just going to go through a handful of our deals, so feel free to engage in whatever way you see fit through the chat to ask us questions. But I'm going to start with two deals that they both closed in the last week. They are very different from one another in terms of return, in terms of expectation, a little bit of difference in timeline, but in general, they were both really good deals that I was happy with. So the first one is in Arizona City, Arizona. Been targeting this area pretty heavily just due to the amount of demand. Pretty simple in terms of all the lots for single family are selling for about 25 to 28,000, and for multifamily anywhere from 32 to 47, depending on how many units that you're able to have built on the unit. So we purchased this one just a few weeks ago in uh, and I've got the HUD right here. We bought it for 20,000, and our all-in cost on it was actually 22,494, which is pretty high in terms of closing costs compared to what I'm usually paying in closing costs. So that makes me question whether or not I'll continue to use this particular title company. With that being said, we had worked with our realtor. This was a interesting one. We had essentially sold it before we bought it, but we didn't have any assignment language in our initial contract, so we weren't able to assign it or really do a double close. But that being said, the property did have to go through probate. I think an important thing to note on that is typically whenever you are dealing with probate, it is necessary for the state in which the property is located in for the probate process to happen in that state. So, seller lived in Colorado, the property's in Arizona. Property had gone through probate in Colorado, but it had not gone through it in Arizona. So we had to deal with that. We had to hire attorneys to get that done. They had to pay for all of that. But with that being said, we're getting some feedback. But with that being said, all in at 22,494. We had already sold it on the back end for 28,500. So after costs on the back end, 24,586, which is only about $2,000 in profit. However, with that being said, my money was out for just, I think, 3 or 4 days all in. So pretty great timeline in terms of getting the deal done. Not an amazing return, but it's something to do whenever you can just keep the business going. So that's the first one that I'm going to do. The second one, I think I might have talked about in our last meeting. I had just acquired it. This is out in Salida, Colorado. It's got a little cabin on it. It's very narrow. This one was interesting. We had a survey completed on it, and there was a discrepancy between the legal description on the survey and what the county had. And so whenever you deal with that, you have to first determine if it's a resolvable issue or if it's not. In this case, it was. So that surveyor is going to be completing that action and making sure the legal description matches with what the county is saying it is. That's going to cost about $5,000. That being said, we were all in at this property for $44,349. We negotiated this one for over a year, give or take. Had been having conversations with the seller for a very long time. Finally agreed to sell it, and we purchased January 4th of 2024. On the sale side, we sold it for $115,000. It closed on March 14th of 2024. So total net on that one was something around 60 to $70,000. So very different types of property, but it just goes to show that if you follow up, if you do the right things with it, and if you're connecting with very competent attorneys, you have the ability to close lots of deals and make a lot of things happen. So I'll stop and allow Dan to jump in and share his screen with any deals that he wants to start going over.
Yeah, I have two I want to share immediately right off the bat. One well, they both illustrate different points. One is a win,
I think
one
you're
is a
muted.
loss. What? I unmuted myself. Can you hear me? Can you hear me, Mason? I'm not muted. Microphone. Refresh. Reload.
Well, what's up, Kenny?
Can you hear me now? You still can't hear me? No idea what's happening.
All right, they can hear you on their end, Dan. I can't hear you, but go for it.
Okay. All right. Well, guys, I'm going to show you two very contrasting deals, one positive, one negative. So let me show you this one to start. So this is a deal, haven't done business here in a long time, but we got this lead last April. I checked our mailing and we sent it in March, early March of last year. And there was back and forth, back and forth. This guy speaks Spanish. He disappeared for a while. We used Google Translate. You can see a couple different people worked the deal. He ignored us for quite a while. And here, finally, I don't know how many follow-ups that was, a couple dozen. We got the deal last week, had to enlist the help of a Spanish-speaking acquaintance. And the point I wanted to make with this is just the follow up required. I mean, the amount of deals we're getting 6 to 12 months after we initially have contact with them is 40 or 50%. Sometimes we still get them where we send a mailer or do a cold call, they answer or call us back, and 2 weeks later it's closed. But that's becoming rare, and more often than not, it's 3 months of follow up minimum. And so along with that, it's also just the solving of problems. There's some complexities with this one, but it's a good one. We're buying it at 19, and it's selling. Looks like going to be able to sell higher than I expected, around the 36-ish mark, very quickly once we can get it closed. So it's under contract. So that's the first one, just illustrating the importance of follow up over the long term. Excuse me. Now the second one that I'm going to show you guys, this will be the first ever deal that I lose money on, the first ever land flip that I'll lose money on. So this is a Sandoval County, Rio Rancho is the city, New Mexico deal. And I'll take the blame here because I should have let this acquisition manager go sooner than I did. I ended up letting him go, but I should have done it sooner, definitely. So we comped it, or he comped it at 50K when we bought it last, what was it? I think April, where we ended up making the deal. Yeah, it looks like April. So almost a year. And the importance of due diligence checklists and never varying from them is the point I want to make here, where he didn't triple check if there was power. And the comps he looked at 50 were spot on if this had power, but it turned out it was a number of lots away. And so we bought it at 25. We listed it, I think, at 50 or 55 initially, expecting it to sell quickly. And first buyer that looks at it was all excited because it's a nice lot in a nice area. But he goes, "Oh, well, what's the cost to extend power?" Turns out that cost is like $24,000. So all that to say, we bought it at 25 and we're selling it at 25. So I will lose several $1,000s on this one. And this is the first land flip I have ever lost money on because the basic due diligence checklist wasn't followed. It doesn't have power to it. So again, I should have done a better job coaching up front and teaching him to not vary from the checklist, and then should have let him go sooner when he couldn't seem to follow them. So anyways, it's easy when you're doing a lot of volume, when you've done hundreds of deals, to vary from some of this stuff, to make assumptions of, oh, there's houses down the street, this definitely has power to it. Those assumptions can cost you money. And also, too, the cost to extend power or any utility can vary pretty wildly from market to market. I mean, where I build here in Colorado, I think it's $2,000 per power pole. So not that bad. Whereas here. It's not that far. It needs to be extended, but it is expensive. So anyways, establish your due diligence checklist. And no matter how obvious you think it is, always go through them and triple check everything. Treat it like a flight checklist, a flight takeoff checklist. So, Mason, back to you.
Yeah, the next deal that I will share is a deal that Dan and I did through Ground Up Partners. So with this particular one, it was in an area that neither of us had done business with, but one of the great things about it was the amount of confidence that we got from the realtor that we were actually working with out there. So, um, I mean, she represented us in a way that I felt like it was selling a luxury single family home. So it was lot 23 in Forbidden Cove. Was a gated community, uh, relatively steep slope. With this particular one, we had a joint venture partner bring it to us, and we did a profit split right around that 50-50 mark, maybe 45-55 on it. But they got it under contract for 22,850, and after all costs, we ended up being in this deal at $24,756. The realtor definitely underpromised and over-delivered. I think we both expected this property to sit on the market for several months and take quite a while to sell. We acquired on the 8th of December, and we closed on it March 7th. So just under 3 months later, and we sold it for $46,000 is what our contract price was. So about $20,000 higher than what we ended up purchasing it for. But I think one of the interesting things to note on this particular property, rather beyond the opportunity to work with us and have us provide all the capital and then do a profit split on the back end, is finding a realtor that is extraordinarily competent to work with. She knew what she was talking about. She's familiar with all of the, just like Dan was saying, with the issues he had on the last deal that he did. This particular realtor knows everything that goes into the due diligence for purchasing and selling a lot in Waynesville, North Carolina. So I've done 2 more deals with her where she's been very transparent. And I think that's the main thing to note with this particular deal is that in every area of the country, you have to be very specific with the knowledge and the processes that you're following with the due diligence that you're completing. For instance, in this particular county, it's very typical for the due diligence period to be 10 weeks long, and that's because that's how the county works with the septic permitting. The county itself is going out there dealing with the septic permitting, and so the 2 lots that I've sold or that are under contract to sell with her have a 12-week close and a 10-week due diligence period. That being said, I got a check in the mail for non-refundable a due diligence fee essentially during this time period, which is pretty nice. However, it's just something to note whenever you're working with people in different markets. I think a lot of times people will defer to their realtor to tell them everything that they need to know within the due diligence process. And while that's can be helpful, if there's a misalignment of incentives and you haven't done business with them in the past, you need to be really cautious and you need to double check and verify everything with all the local utility districts, the county and city government that are involved. Don't trust your realtor to do all that for you, because unless they are really great and a specialist within the land space, they probably actually don't know what they're doing when it comes to that kind of stuff. So just wanted to highlight this particular one in contradiction to some of the stuff that Dan went through with that last deal that he lost money on, where this one we made money on it and the realtor was really the savior in all of this. So Dan, if you want to jump in and start talking through another deal.
Yeah, your point about the variation from market to market, the due diligence fee is a great example of that. On the standard North Carolina land contract, there's a line for due diligence fee which is just non-refundable earnest sent directly to the seller. And that would not fly among retail buyers unless they really want it in most markets. And so I think that illustrates the point. But yeah, let me share one here because there's a couple points I can pull out that are important for people. Okay, so this is in South Carolina, and we got this lead from RJTS Properties LLC. And so they are an investment company, but they don't specialize in land. They specialize in housing. And this came with a house or something like that, or maybe it came with an estate. I forget the full background, but so first point right off the bat is we have bought dozens and dozens of properties from LLCs of different kinds. I bought from the Boy Scouts one time. I bought from the church. I bought from all kinds of different entities, retired developers, investors, etc. So don't let that deter you and only target individuals. Number two, this one was interesting in that they had bought it on tax deed, tax sale. So of course, that created a little bit of complexity or potential for complexity, but it was well over 10 years ago. So I forget the exact rules in South Carolina, but that ended up kind of just being a non-issue because the title was naturally, or quiet title had taken place naturally. So anyways, all that to say, in these sellers' minds, this was just an extra that wasn't really worth anything. So we're buying it at 7,500 bucks. Closing over there is a little more expensive. The attorney states tend to be, so it'll be about $2,000, maybe 2,200 bucks. And then the legal description, the attorney wants a new survey because the legal description didn't match somewhere or something. So also paying like 500 bucks for a survey, which further illustrates how cheap things are down in the Carolinas and the South in general. So all in, call it 10,500. We're going to list this one at 50. Might sell at 30, might sell at 50. I don't know, but at a total basis of 10,500, doesn't really matter. It's a good deal. And so in summary, the main points I'm trying to drive home here are: don't be afraid to mail, call, text other investors, and potentially challenging title issues that other people stay away from are a source of good deals. Oh, last point. They also were insistent on quitclaim deed, and that can be intimidating, but the attorney is still able to, or via their company, get title insurance for it, so it doesn't really matter. So yeah, should be a good deal. I don't know how quickly it'll sell, but again, when your basis is this low, it just doesn't really matter. Mason?
All right, sweet. I think that was a interesting and good example to hear. I mean, I know that I own, I don't know, probably 20 or 30 properties that are currently on the market throughout the country. And I know that if I got the right offer on some lots that come off market, I know I would sell it on certain pieces of land that I have just to get them off the books, get some cash back. So I say this as an active investor, that I'd be happy to sell some of my lots at a discount or even at a loss sometimes, just because it's nice to get the cash back. So you never know. It's important to expand your marketing material. So this is a funny lead that we have. It's 2 properties. It's this one right here that's highlighted, and then it's this one right here that has this funky shape with a house in the middle of it that is not owned by the property owner. The reason that this seller got back to us was because my company's name, RM Golden, she had a boss 40 years ago named Mr. Golden, and she liked our name. So you never know what people are going to have, or what people will respond to, or what's going to excite them with marketing material. And that's part of why we try to be as transparent as we can with the deals that we're doing. Obviously, we wouldn't appreciate if people reached out to the sellers that we're talking about on these calls, but in general, we don't view anyone as competition, not necessarily because we think we're better than everyone, but because it all depends on what people are going to respond to on a different day. So we've offered on this one, we offered 25,000. She's willing to accept it. She's older. She's having her daughter help her out with the contract process. So it's taking a longer time to get back to us. And she's verbally accepted. Who knows if she will end up actually accepting and signing the contract and everything. We all know that experience of not being able to actually have people close, even though they're verbally accepting our deals. However, we did not make an offer on this lot next to it. The larger one, it does have road frontage access. However, there's this easement that runs through the property to get to this other one, and we told her basically we would take it off her hands, just as a combination of the deal. So I think there is value with this particular lot. We'll come up with an exit on it. However, if we acquire this one at 25,000, we know we have a deal because this one sold at the beginning of the year right down the street. It's 0.6 acres. The one that we have contract out on is 1 total acre. And with a 25K offer and seeing this one sell at 50,000, we're pretty confident. So while this one is smaller, it's cleared. And that's something else that we will most likely do with this particular property if we end up getting it, is we're going to do some form of clearing, not necessarily to the level that that particular lot was, just in case people want to keep certain trees, but knowing that a cleared lot right down the street with some fencing on it sold for double what we're offering, even though it's 60% of the size of it, gives us a lot of room in this deal. But the primary point that I really wanted to drive home on this one is just, if you are consistent in your marketing and you're sending, whether it's purchase agreements or postcards or cold calling or texting to areas that are producing deals, you're going to get a response eventually. Now, the important thing to note is you need to be able to follow up with these people. Just like I was saying that I, as an investor that owns a lot of land, would be willing to part ways with some of my properties that are going to be underperforming. I have called these people back and no one ever calls me back. I mean, we got an offer. Kenny, I see that you asked a question. I'll respond to that in a second. Kenny, on the deal that we're doing together, we got an offer in the mail for $77 total for that parcel. So it happens. There's a lot of people that are really, really bad at this business. And in terms of what percent of sales price are we typically making offers for land at, 50 cents on the dollar, it really depends. It depends on a lot of factors, including what our cost of capital is, how quickly the area is moving, where that deal that I showed at the beginning, where we bought it for 20 and essentially we're all in at 22.6 and we sold it for 28.5, but it was on and off the market. I mean, it technically never even went on the market. I don't know what percentage of market price that really is, but I had essentially a 25% cash on cash return in 4 days, which if you annualize that, that's something like 100 quintillion. If you annualize that return. So it really depends on the area. There's certain areas that I wouldn't touch for less than 10 to 20 cents on the dollar. And there's other areas that I'd go all the way up to 80 to 90%. And it also depends on what your exit strategy is. So that's something that Dan and I are working on together, of just different projects throughout the state and the country, where if you can come in at market price of, say, it's a 350 acre parcel and you could easily split it up into 35 acre parcels. If market price is, let's say, $100,000 for that 350 acre parcel, and you can sell each individual 35 acre parcel for $40,000, why not go in at 100% of market price? Because there's so much room in the deal. So it really varies and it really depends, just like with everything. But yeah, it all depends on the velocity of money, the market that it's in, the type of product that it is, and that sort of thing. So it's calculate what your risk tolerance is and what your anticipated return amount needs to be in order to pay back any lenders that you're working with, or whatever your desired return for your cost or your individual capital returns are. It all depends. So hope that answers your question. And Dan, I'll throw it back to you as we start moving towards the end of this half hour.
Yeah, I'll just expand on what you were just saying, especially in these markets that are really moving. We've done 3 assignments in the last month. Haven't done assignments in a long time, but they've been useful because they're in markets where we already have a realtor and title company in place. They handle all the transaction coordination, make it really simple. And so that is a tool we are using again. Hadn't done an assignment in several years, but all 3 of those closed without issue. And we're definitely looking to do more. And so, kind of along that train of thought, there's another deal we have under contract in Florida. The specific deal is somewhat irrelevant, but this market has doubled. No, wait, let me rephrase. This specific type of land in this market has more than doubled in the last year. We were buying these things at 14 to 16 last year, selling them at 28 to 34 for really nice ones. And now we have one under contract at 36. I expect to sell it around 60 and very, very quickly. And we've done quite a few of these already this year. And so pay attention, especially as you've been doing this a while, as you've established yourself in certain markets. This tends to happen, because I've watched this happen quite a few times, right outside of major metros and second or tertiary markets, where the metro or the whatever's closest just gets to a tipping point where it gets so expensive that people just flock to the next, whatever it's, down the highway or, down the Front Range in Colorado, to the next town, and land prices go up dramatically. And then you can go back and give what were previously dead leads what they wanted and still make a nice spread because pricing has gone up so much. And so that's been a big source of good deals for us this year as well, just speaking to these really hot markets. So yeah, I don't know if you have anything you want to say on that, Mason, but assignments have been great, and pay attention to the markets that are going up in price.
Yeah, I mean, it goes back into making sure you have a really good contract on the front end. I know that there's some beauty in the simplicity of using like the not as thorough contracts, but having a contract that can be marketable or assignable is really helpful depending on the type of lender that you're working with. Or if it's in a market like you're talking about where you don't even need to list it. It's always a difficult balance of determining, okay, does it make more sense? Can I get a higher return if I just purchase it outright and sell it on the market? Or is it more important to me to not have to outlay any capital? It all depends. However, if you're in that position where you feel like you will get the best return closing on the deal and then relisting it, feel free to send it to us at gupland.com.
Yep. Great. Well, I think that's good for today. The market's moving, guys. There's endless deals out there. Just be consistent in your marketing and your follow-up, and you'll get deals. Anything else you want to say, Mason?
Nope, I don't think so. Thank you for those of you guys that joined. Feel free to reach out to any of us or either of us if you have deals, want to chat through anything, or need funding for anything. We're here for you. Until next time.